My son called, "Give me your car. You're too old to drive." I smiled and gave him the keys. But when I handed over those keys with a smile, my son thought he'd won. He thought his 73-year-old mother had finally accepted her place, quiet, obedient, and out of the way. What he didn't know was that I had spent 40 years building something he couldn't see, something he couldn't take. And in that moment, as his fingers closed around the metal, I wasn't surrendering. I was setting a trap. Good day, dear listeners. It's Isabella again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. Today's story is one that still makes my heart ache when I think about it, but it's also a story about finding strength when you thought you had none left. So settle in and let me tell you about Margaret. My name is Margaret Ellen Holloway, and I've lived in Savannah, Georgia for the past 47 years. There's something about this city, the Spanish moss hanging from the oak trees, the cobblestone streets downtown, the way the humidity wraps around you like a warm blanket in summer, that gets into your bones. I came here as a young bride in 1977, following my husband Harold to his new job at the Port Authority. I was 26 years old, fresh-faced, and full of dreams about the family we'd build together. Harold passed away 6 years ago, on a Tuesday morning in October. Pancreatic cancer. By the time they found it, there was nothing to be done. We had 41 years together, and I'd give anything for 41 more. He was the kind of man who brought me coffee in bed every morning, who never forgot an anniversary, who spent his weekends tending to his rose garden in our backyard. Those roses still bloom every spring. I can't bring myself to let them go. We raised 2 children in our little house on Whitaker Street. There was Derek, our firstborn, who came along in 1980, and then Patricia, 3 years later. I worked as a legal secretary at Morrison and Associates for 32 years. I typed briefs, organized files, and learned more about the law than most people ever want to know. That knowledge would prove useful later, though I didn't know it at the time. After Harold died, I thought my children would be my comfort. Patricia certainly was. She lived in Charleston with her husband, Michael, and their 2 daughters, Emma and Sophie. She called every Sunday without fail. She visited when she could. She was, in every way, the daughter I had raised her to be. But Derek, my Derek, something had changed in him, and for the longest time, I refused to see it. Derek had always been the ambitious one. Even as a boy, he wanted more. More toys, more attention, more of everything. Harold used to say that ambition was a good thing, that it would drive Derek to success. And for a while, it seemed Harold was right. Derek graduated from Georgia Tech with a degree in business. He married Jennifer Chen in 2008, a beautiful woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. They had a son, Tyler, who was now 15 years old. For years, our relationship was good. Not perfect. Derek could be distant sometimes, wrapped up in his work and his life, but good enough. He called on holidays. He brought Tyler to visit during summers. When Harold got sick, Derek flew down 3 times to help. I thought I knew my son. I was wrong. The first sign of trouble came in January 2022, about 4 years after Harold's death. I had just finished paying off the last of the medical bills, $47,000 that insurance hadn't covered. I was finally feeling like I could breathe again. My pension from the law firm, combined with Harold's Social Security survivor benefits and the money he'd left me, meant I was comfortable. Not wealthy, but comfortable. Derek called on a Wednesday evening. I remember because I was watching my favorite show, and I almost didn't answer. I wish I hadn't. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something," he said, his voice carrying that particular tension I learned to recognize over the years. "Jennifer and I are in a bit of a situation." The situation, as he explained it, was a business opportunity that couldn't wait. Derek had been working as a regional manager for a logistics company, but he had a chance to buy into a partnership with a colleague. They were starting a consulting firm. The potential was enormous, he said, but he needed capital. How much are we talking about? I asked, already feeling that familiar tug of maternal worry. $15,000, Mom. I know it's a lot, but this is a sure thing. We'll pay you back within a year, I promise. What else would a mother do? I transferred the money the next day. Derek thanked me profusely. Jennifer sent a text, "You're the best mother-in-law anyone could ask for." I believed them. That was my first mistake. The consulting firm, it turned out, never quite got off the ground. There were delays, complications. By June 2022, Derek was calling again. This time, it was $8,500 for unexpected licensing fees. In September, it was $12,000 because one of the partners had pulled out and they needed to cover the gap. In December, right before Christmas, he asked for $20,000 to keep the business afloat through the new year. Each time, there were promises. Each time, there were excuses. Each time, I believed him because he was my son, and mothers believe their children. I started keeping track in a small notebook I kept in my nightstand drawer. The same notebook where I used to write down grocery lists and Harold's doctor appointments. Now it held a different kind of record. January 2022, $15,000 for business partnership. June 2022, $8,500 for licensing fees. September 2022, $12,000 to cover partner withdrawal. December 2022, $20,000 for business operations. March 2023, $7,500 for Tyler's private school tuition that they couldn't cover this semester. July 2023, $18,000 for a temporary cash flow problem. November 2023, $11,000 because Jennifer's car broke down and they needed reliable transportation. Each time I sent money, I made sacrifices. I canceled the trip to Ireland I'd been planning for years. The trip Harold and I had always said we'd take together, that I wanted to make in his memory. I postponed dental work I needed. I stopped buying the good coffee. I ate less, told myself I was watching my figure. I sold some of Harold's tools that I'd been keeping in the garage, telling myself he would have wanted me to help our son. By the end of 2023, I had given Derek and Jennifer $92,000. $92,000. I remember sitting at my kitchen table one evening in January 2024, looking at that notebook, adding up the numbers for the third time because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The kitchen was quiet. Outside, the winter sun was setting, casting long shadows across Harold's rose garden. I could see the bare branches through the window, waiting for spring. I had never in my life had $92,000 at one time. It had accumulated slowly, carefully, over decades of work and saving and sacrifice. Harold's life insurance, our retirement accounts, the equity we'd built in our home. And now, so much of it was gone, poured into something I was beginning to suspect didn't exist, but I pushed those thoughts away. Derek was my son. He wouldn't lie to me, not about something like this. Then came March 2024. Patricia called me on a Saturday afternoon, and her voice was strange. "Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Of course, sweetheart. What is it?" "Have you been giving Derek money?" I hesitated. Derek had asked me to keep our arrangement private. He said he was embarrassed, that he didn't want Patricia to worry, that it was just between us until he could get back on his feet. But Patricia was my daughter, and I couldn't lie to her. "Yes," I admitted. "He's been having some business troubles. I've been helping where I can." There was silence on the line. Then Patricia said something that made my blood run cold. "Mom, Derek, and Jennifer just bought a vacation condo in Hilton Head. I saw the photos on Jennifer's Facebook page. They closed on it last month. It's a 3-bedroom unit right on the beach. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Mom, are you there? I'm here, I whispered. How much have you given him? I couldn't answer. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely set it down on the counter. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all those phone calls, all those emergencies, all those promises. And then I thought about a beach condo in Hilton Head, a place where people go to vacation, to relax, to enjoy their wealth. Something cold settled in my chest. Not sadness, not yet. Something sharper, clearer. The next morning, I made myself a cup of coffee, the cheap kind, the kind I'd been buying for 2 years now, and I sat down at my computer. I'm 73 years old, and I'm not the most technologically sophisticated person, but I know how to use Facebook. Harold's granddaughters had taught me years ago so I could see pictures of them. It took me 20 minutes to find Jennifer's profile. She had it set to public, and there, right at the top of her feed, was a photo of her and Derek standing on a balcony overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. The caption read, "Finally closed on our dream getaway. Can't wait to make memories here. Blessed and grateful." The post was dated February 28th, 2024. 3 weeks after Derek had called me asking for $11,000 because their car had broken down and they were barely making ends meet. I scrolled down. There was a photo from December. Derek and Jennifer at a ski resort in Colorado, bundled in expensive-looking gear, champagne glasses raised to the camera. Another from September. Jennifer showing off a new designer handbag that I happen to know costs more than my monthly grocery budget. July. A professional family portrait, Tyler in a crisp blazer, Jennifer in what looked like a silk dress, Derek beaming beside them. I sat back in my chair, the coffee growing cold beside me. For a long time I didn't move. The grandfather clock in the hallway, Harold's father's clock, which had been in the family for 3 generations, ticked steadily, marking the seconds as I tried to understand what I was seeing. My son had lied to me. Not once, not twice. Systematically, deliberately, repeatedly, for over 2 years. He had looked at his 73-year-old widowed mother and seen not a person to be loved and protected, but a resource to be exploited. I thought about all the meals I'd skipped, the trip to Ireland I'd never take, the dental work I still needed. I thought about Harold's tools, sold to strangers for a fraction of their worth. I thought about the nights I'd lain awake worrying about Derek, praying his business would succeed, hoping I'd done enough to help. And then I thought about that beach condo, that ski trip, that designer handbag. Something changed in me that morning. I felt it happen, like a switch being flipped somewhere deep inside. The mother who had given and given and given without question, that mother stepped aside. In her place stood someone new, someone harder, someone who was done being used. I picked up my phone and called Patricia. "I need your help," I said, "and I need you to tell me everything you know about your brother's finances." What I learned over the next 2 weeks made me sick to my stomach. Derek's consulting business, the one I'd been funding for 2 years, had never existed. There was no partnership, no licensing fees, no partner who'd pulled out. He had made it all up. The business address he'd given me was a UPS store in Atlanta. The website he'd shown me once had been taken down because there was nothing behind it. Meanwhile, his actual job, the regional manager position at the logistics company, was going strong. He'd been promoted twice since 2022. His salary, according to Patricia, who had a friend who worked in HR at the same company, was well over $180,000 a year. Jennifer worked as a pharmaceutical sales representative, earning another $95,000 annually. Together, they made more than $250,000. And they had been taking money from their widowed mother, who lived on a fixed income of $3,400 a month. I called my bank on a Thursday morning. I spoke to a customer service representative named Melissa, and then to a fraud specialist named David Chen. I pulled together every transfer receipt, every text message, every email Derek had sent asking for money. I spread all the receipts across my dining room table, the same table where Harold and I had eaten dinner together for 40 years. The number stared back at me, unchanging and cruel. $92,000. Gone. David Chen was kind but direct. Mrs. Holloway, this appears to be a case of elder financial exploitation. The good news is that everything was done with your consent, meaning your bank accounts weren't compromised by a third party. The bad news is that recovering money given willingly is much harder. You'll need legal help. That's when I thought about all those years at Morrison and Associates, all those briefs I'd typed, all those cases I'd helped organize. And I thought about Barbara Morrison herself, the founding partner, who had retired just 2 years before I did. I looked up her number and dialed. Barbara Morrison was 79 years old, but her mind was as sharp as it had been when I first started working for her in 1985. When I explained the situation, there was a long pause. "Margaret, I'm so sorry," she said finally, "but I want you to know that you're not alone, and you're not without options. There's the attorney I want you to meet. Her name is Angela Castellanos. She specializes in elder law and financial exploitation cases. She's one of the best in the state." I wrote down the number with a steady hand. 3 days later, I was sitting in Angela Castellanos' office in downtown Savannah. She was a tall woman in her early 50s, with silver streaking through her dark hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. Her office was cluttered but organized, every surface covered with case files and legal texts. On her wall hung her law degree from Emory University, along with a framed newspaper article about a case she'd won against a nursing home that had been exploiting its residents. I told her everything: the phone calls, the money, the lies, the beach condo and the ski trips. She listened without interrupting, taking notes in a legal pad with a fountain pen that scratched softly against the paper. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me. "Mrs. Holloway, what your son has done is called elder financial exploitation. In the state of Georgia, it's a crime. It's also grounds for a civil suit to recover your losses, plus damages." "Can I actually get my money back?" I asked. "I believe we have a very strong case. The key is documentation, and from what you've told me, you've kept excellent records. The contrast between his claims of financial distress and his actual lifestyle, the condo, the vacations, his salary, that's exactly what we need." "What about my relationship with my son?" Angela removed her glasses and set them on the desk. "Mrs. Holloway, I'm going to be direct with you. Your son made a choice. He chose to lie to you. He chose to take your money under false pretenses. He chose to let you sacrifice your comfort and your security while he lived in luxury. Whatever happens to your relationship is a consequence of his choices, not yours." I nodded slowly. Something in her words settled the last of my doubts. "Tell me what I need to do," I said. We built the case over the following weeks. Angela's paralegal, a young man named Marcus Washington, was instrumental in gathering evidence. He pulled Derek's public social media posts, dozens of them, documenting vacations and purchases and a lifestyle that had nothing to do with the struggling businessman he'd pretended to be. He obtained property records showing that Derek and Jennifer had purchased their beach condo for $485,000, putting down $120,000 in cash. Cash that, the timeline suggested, had come directly from me. He tracked down the UPS store that Derek had used as his business address, confirming that no legitimate business had ever operated from that location. He compiled records of every transfer I'd made, organized by date, and cross-referenced with Derek's claims and his actual financial activities. The file Angela put together was devastating. "We're going to send a demand letter first," Angela explained during one of our meetings. "Sometimes, when people see that their victim has legal representation and documented evidence, They choose to settle quietly rather than face a lawsuit. It's worth trying. The demand letter went out on a Tuesday in late April. It was 12 pages long and outlined, in precise legal language, exactly what Derek had done, exactly what evidence we had, and exactly what we were demanding. Full restitution of $92,000, plus interest, plus damages for emotional distress. Derek called me 2 days later. It was 8:15 in the morning. I was sitting in my kitchen, drinking my coffee, when my phone rang. "Mom!" His voice was tight, barely controlled. "I just received a letter from an attorney. What the hell is this?" "It's exactly what it says it is, Derek. I know what you did. I know about the condo. I know about the vacations. I know there was never any business. You're suing your own son? Do you have any idea how this makes me look? Do you have any idea what you took from me?" There was silence on the line. "Mom, this is all a misunderstanding. If you just let me explain—" "Derek, there's nothing to explain. I have the receipts. I have the records. I have photographs of you skiing in Colorado 3 weeks after you told me you couldn't afford to fix your car. Don't insult my intelligence." His tone shifted. The pleading disappeared, replaced by something colder. "So fine. You want to do this? Let's do this. But you should know, Mom, that Jennifer and I have already talked to our own attorney. He says you gave us that money willingly. You can't prove fraud. This is going to be thrown out, and you're going to look like a senile old woman who forgot what she agreed to. I guess we'll see about that. And another thing." His voice dropped lower, more menacing. "Tyler is going to know about this. My son is going to know that his grandmother tried to destroy his family. How do you think that's going to affect your relationship with him?" I felt a stab of pain at that. Tyler, my grandson, a boy I had held as an infant, whose drawings were still on my refrigerator, who used to call me Grandma Maggie and beg for my chocolate chip cookies. But I had thought this through. Angela and I had discussed it, and I had made my peace with it. "Derek, you can tell Tyler whatever you want, but one day when he's older, he'll learn the truth. He'll see the records, he'll read the court documents, and he'll make his own judgment about who his father really is." Derek hung up without another word. 3 weeks later, a formal response came from Derek's attorney, a man named Richard Brennan from an Atlanta firm. The response denied all allegations, claimed that all gifts were given freely and without conditions, and countered that I was suffering from age-related cognitive decline that affected my memory of events. It also included a veiled threat to seek conservatorship over my finances if I continued to engage in irrational litigation. I showed the letter to Angela. She read it twice, then set it down with a small smile. "They're scared," she said. "A conservatorship threat is a desperate move. It's designed to intimidate you into backing down. But they have no grounds for it. You're clearly mentally competent, and we have documentation of your competency from your physician. This is a bluff. So what do? We call the bluff. We file the lawsuit." The lawsuit was filed on May 23, 2024, in the Superior Court of Chatham County, Georgia. The case was styled Holloway v. Holloway, and it sought recovery of $92,000 in principal, $11,000 in interest, and $50,000 in damages for emotional distress and elder exploitation. The local news picked up the story. A reporter from the Savannah Morning News called, asking for comment. I declined on Angela's advice, but the story ran anyway. Savannah widow sues son for alleged elder exploitation. There was a photograph of me from my Facebook page, one that Patricia had taken at Sophie's birthday party last year. I looked happy in it. I had been happy before all of this. The article quoted legal experts who said cases like mine were becoming increasingly common. Elder financial exploitation by family members is one of the most underreported crimes in America, said one professor from Georgia State. Victims often don't come forward because of shame, or because they can't believe their own children would do this to them. I understood that. I had lived it. The response to the article surprised me. My phone rang constantly for days. Old friends I hadn't heard from in years called to offer support. My neighbor, Martha, brought over a casserole and sat with me while I ate. Letters arrived from strangers, some from as far away as California and Oregon, telling me their own stories of family betrayal and thanking me for speaking out. One letter came from a woman named Dorothy in Tampa, Florida. She was 78 years old, and her daughter had taken her for over $200,000 over 5 years. She had never pursued legal action because she was too ashamed. But reading about my case, she wrote, gave her courage. She was going to talk to a lawyer. I kept that letter in my nightstand, next to my notebook of records. In June, something unexpected happened. Tyler called me. It was late on a Saturday evening. I was reading in the living room, the lamp casting soft light over the pages of my book, when my phone buzzed. The name on the screen made me catch my breath. Tyler? Grandma Maggie. His voice was quiet, uncertain. I wanted to talk to you. Of course, sweetheart. I'm always here for you. There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing, could almost see him pacing in his room the way he did when he was nervous. Dad told me about the lawsuit, he finally said. He said you're trying to take our house, that you're confused and that your lawyers are taking advantage of you. Is that what he told you? Yeah, but... Another pause. Grandma, I'm not stupid. I've seen things. I've heard Mom and Dad talk, and I looked up the news article, the one about the case. I didn't say anything. I just listened. The article said you gave Dad $92,000 because he told you his business was failing. But Dad doesn't have a business, Grandma. He works for TransLogic. He's been there since I was little. He got promoted to senior VP last year. We celebrated at that fancy steakhouse downtown. I know, sweetheart. So he lied to you. He lied to you and took your money and then bought the beach condo. Tyler's voice cracked slightly. I heard them talking about it, Grandma. About how they were going to manage you. About how you'd never find out because you're old and you trust them. I closed my eyes. The pain was still there, but it was different now, muted somehow, overwritten by something that felt almost like relief. My grandson knew. My grandson understood. Tyler, I want you to know something. No matter what happens between me and your father, I will always love you. You are my grandson. That will never change. I love you too, Grandma. He was crying now. I could hear it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what they did. It's not your fault, sweetheart. None of this is your fault. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet living room for a long time. Harold's photograph watched me from the mantel. Our wedding picture, both of us so young, so full of hope. I wondered what he would say about all of this, about our son, about the lawsuit, about the way our family had fractured. I thought he would tell me I was doing the right thing. I thought he would tell me that protecting myself wasn't a betrayal of motherhood, that letting myself be exploited was no gift to anyone. I thought he would hold me close and tell me he was proud of me. That thought carried me through the weeks that followed. The pre-trial motions were brutal. Derek's attorney filed motion after motion, to dismiss for failure to state a claim, to dismiss for lack of evidence, to compel a mental competency evaluation. Angela countered every one of them methodically, professionally, devastatingly. The court denied each motion to dismiss. The competency evaluation request was thrown out after my physician, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, submitted a detailed report confirming that I was fully mentally capable and showed no signs of cognitive decline. By September, the trial date was set, October 15th, 2024. Derek made one more attempt to settle before trial. His attorney sent a letter offering $30,000, less than a third of what I'd lost, in exchange for dropping the case and signing an agreement never to discuss the matter publicly. I told Angela to reject it. The day of the trial arrived cold and overcast, the sky heavy with clouds that threatened rain. Angela picked me up at my house at 7:30 in the morning. I had chosen my outfit carefully, a navy blue dress, conservative and dignified, with the pearl earrings Harold had given me for our 25th anniversary. "How are you feeling?" Angela asked as we drove downtown. "Ready," I said, and I meant it. The Chatham County Courthouse was an imposing building, all columns and marble, the kind of place that made you feel small. But as I walked up the steps, I didn't feel small. I felt certain. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Judge Patricia Oyalaran presided, a black woman in her 60s with silver-rimmed glasses and a reputation for being tough but fair. I learned later that she had spent 15 years as a prosecutor before being appointed to the bench. She didn't suffer fools, and she didn't tolerate manipulation. Derek and Jennifer sat at the defense table with their attorney, Richard Brennan. Derek was wearing an expensive suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored. He looked successful. He looked respectable. He looked like exactly the kind of person who would never exploit his own mother. But I had the records. I had the evidence. And I had Angela. The trial lasted 3 days. On the first day, Angela laid out the case. She presented the timeline of loans, each one meticulously documented. She showed the jury the text messages Derek had sent, full of urgent pleas and heartbreaking lies. "Mom, I don't know what we're going to do. The business is failing. Tyler might have to leave private school. Please, I wouldn't ask if I had any other choice. I know things are tight for you too, but we're family. Family helps each other. We'll pay you back, I promise. Just help us get through this rough patch." Then she showed them the photographs. Derek and Jennifer at the ski resort, 3 days after that last message. Derek and Jennifer on their new balcony in Hilton Head, champagne in hand. Jennifer with her new Gucci bag, purchased the same month she texted me. "We're so grateful for everything you do for us, Mom. You're our rock." The jury's faces were hard to read, but I saw one woman, middle-aged with graying hair, shake her head slowly. On the second day, Richard Brennan tried to paint me as confused, forgetful, overly generous by nature. He suggested that I had simply given Derek money as gifts, that I had misremembered our conversations, that my records were unreliable. Angela destroyed him on redirect. She called Dr. Okonkwo, who testified that I was mentally sharp and fully competent. She called Patricia, who explained the family dynamics and confirmed that Derek had asked her to keep his financial requests secret from other family members, a clear sign of consciousness of guilt. She called a forensic accountant, Dr. Martin Zheng, who had analyzed Derek and Jennifer's finances and concluded that they had never been in financial distress at any point during the relevant time period. "In fact," Dr. Zheng said, adjusting his glasses, "their net worth increased by approximately $340,000 between January 2022 and March 2024. They made major purchases including a vacation property, a luxury vehicle, and various high-end goods. There is no evidence whatsoever that they experienced the financial emergencies described in Mrs. Holloway's documentation." Derek took the stand in his own defense. It was, I think, a mistake. He was charming at first, smooth and confident. He talked about how much he loved me, how he only wanted to help me feel connected to his family, how the money had been gifts that I was now recharacterizing because I was angry about a family dispute. Then Angela began her cross-examination. "Mr. Holloway, in your text message dated September 14th, 2022, you wrote to your mother, and I quote, 'The business is hemorrhaging money. If we don't get an injection of capital immediately, we're going to have to declare bankruptcy. Is that correct?' I may have exaggerated the situation." "I see. And can you tell the court the name of this business?" Derek hesitated. "It was called Holloway Consulting." "And where was Holloway Consulting Incorporated?" I don't. I don't remember exactly. Let me help you, Mr. Holloway. We searched the business registrations for all 50 states. There is no record of any business called Holloway Consulting ever being registered anywhere in this country. Can you explain that? Derek's face went pale. There were delays in the registration. The registration that never happened in the 2+ years you were supposedly running this business? The business you told your mother was worth investing $92,000 in? I meant to register it. Mr. Holloway, did this business ever exist? The courtroom was silent. Derek looked at his attorney, then at Jennifer, then at his hands. It was more of a concept, he finally said, an idea I was developing. So when you told your mother the business was hemorrhaging money and needed capital to avoid bankruptcy, that was a lie, Richard Brennan objected. Judge Oyalaran overruled him. Mr. Holloway, answer the question. Derek's jaw tightened. I may have overstated things. Let me be clear. You told your 71-year-old widowed mother that your business was failing. You told her your son might have to leave school. You told her you were desperate. And all of that was false, while in reality, you were earning over $180,000 a year. Your wife was earning another $95,000, and you were using your mother's money to buy a beach condo. Is that accurate? Derek didn't answer. Mr. Holloway? We were going through some things, he said finally, his voice flat. The money helped. The money helped you buy a $485,000 vacation property. We needed to diversify our assets. A murmur went through the courtroom. I saw the jury forewoman's eyebrows rise. Angela let the silence hang for a moment. Then she said quietly, no further questions. On the third day, closing arguments were made. Angela was brilliant, calm, methodical, devastating. She walked the jury through every lie, every document, every photograph. She talked about elder exploitation, about trust, about the sacred bond between parent and child. Mrs. Holloway worked for 32 years, she said. She raised 2 children. She cared for her husband through a terminal illness. She did everything right. And her reward was to be seen by her own son as nothing more than a source of easy money. A bank account with a heartbeat. That is not just theft. That is betrayal of the highest order. Richard Brennan argued that the money had been freely given, that I was a competent adult who made my own choices, that regret was not grounds for a lawsuit. But the jury had seen the text. They had heard the lies. They had watched Derek crumble on the stand. The deliberation took 4 hours. When the jury filed back in, I kept my eyes fixed on Judge Oyalaran. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. Angela reached over and squeezed my hand. The forewoman stood, the middle-aged woman who had shaken her head earlier. In the matter of Holloway versus Holloway, we the jury find in favor of the plaintiff, Margaret Holloway, on all counts. We award compensatory damages in the amount of $92,000 for principal recovery. We award an additional $11,340 in interest, and we award punitive damages in the amount of $75,000 for elder financial exploitation, $178,340. Total, I heard Jennifer gasp. Derek's face went gray. Richard Brennan was already leaning over, whispering urgently to his clients. Judge Oyalaran thanked the jury, then turned to address the courtroom. I want to make a few remarks before we adjourn. In my 15 years on this bench, I have seen many cases of family conflict, but rarely have I seen such a clear pattern of deliberate deception and exploitation. Mr. Holloway, you looked at your mother and saw an opportunity. You manipulated her love, her trust, and her desire to help her child. You did this not out of need, but out of greed. The jury's verdict is appropriate, and I am also referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. Derek stood abruptly. Your Honor, this is outrageous. Sit down, Mr. Holloway. You've said quite enough. I don't remember walking out of the courtroom. I remember Angela's arm around my shoulders. I remember the sunlight hitting my face as we stepped outside. The clouds had parted finally, and the afternoon was golden and warm. I remember Patricia, who had flown in for the trial, throwing her arms around me and crying. "You did it, Mom! You did it!" I had done it. I had fought back. I had won. But the story wasn't over yet. The aftermath of the trial played out over the following months, and I watched it unfold with a strange sense of detachment. These were consequences, I told myself. Consequences Derek had earned. The criminal referral led to charges. The Chatham County District Attorney, a man named James Robertson, took personal interest in the case. Derek was charged with elder financial exploitation, a felony in Georgia. In February 2025, rather than face a criminal trial, he pleaded guilty to a reduced charge and was sentenced to 5 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and mandatory restitution. But by then, restitution was the least of his problems. Jennifer filed for divorce in January. I learned this from Patricia, who heard it from a mutual friend. Apparently, the public humiliation of the trial, the news coverage, the social media posts, the judgment that labeled her husband as someone who had stolen from his own mother, was too much. Her pharmaceutical company, it turned out, had a morality clause in its employment contracts. The negative publicity put her job at risk. She chose to distance herself. The divorce was ugly. Derek, already facing the $178,340 judgment plus his attorney fees, couldn't afford to fight for much. Jennifer got primary custody of Tyler. She got the house in Atlanta. Derek was allowed to keep the beach condo, which, under the court order, he was forced to sell to help pay what he owed me. The condo sold for $510,000 in March 2025. After closing costs, Derek netted just over $400,000. The court immediately garnished $178,340 of that from my judgment. His attorneys took their fees. By the time it was done, Derek was left with less than $100,000 and a criminal record that made finding new employment nearly impossible. He lost his job at Translogic in April. The official reason was restructuring, but Patricia heard from her HR contact that the company had been looking for a way to let him go since the trial. Nobody wanted a senior VP who had been publicly exposed as someone who would steal from his own mother. It was bad for the brand. I ran into him once in November 2025. I was at the Kroger on Abercorn Street picking up groceries for Thanksgiving dinner. Patricia's family was coming to visit, and I was planning to make Harold's mother's recipe for pecan pie. I was in the produce section, examining the sweet potatoes, when I heard a familiar voice. "Mom." I looked up. Derek stood a few feet away, holding a basket with a few items in it. He looked older than I remembered, thinner, grayer, the expensive suits replaced by a rumpled polo shirt. His eyes were red-rimmed. Derek. We stood there for a moment, neither of us speaking. Other shoppers moved around us, oblivious to the weight of what hung between us. I wanted to say... He stopped, swallowed. I wanted to say, "I'm sorry." I looked at my son. I looked at the man who had lied to me, manipulated me, stolen from me, and then tried to have me declared mentally incompetent when I fought back. I thought about all the nights I'd spent worrying about him, all the money I'd sacrificed, all the trust he had broken. "I'm sure you are," I said quietly. "I'm sure you're very sorry about how things turned out for you." His face flushed. "That's not... I didn't mean... Derek, I loved you. I loved you more than anything in this world. I would have given you everything I had if you just asked me honestly. But you didn't want a mother's help. You wanted a victim, and I refused to be a victim." I picked up my sweet potatoes and put them in my cart. "I hope you find peace someday," I said. "I genuinely do, but I think you need to find it away from me." I walked away. I didn't look back. The money I recovered changed my life, but not in the way people might think. The first thing I did was book that trip to Ireland, the trip Harold and I had always planned to take. The trip I had canceled twice because Derek needed money. I went alone, but I didn't feel alone. I carried Harold's memory with me, imagining his voice as I walked along the cliffs of Moher, as I explored the winding streets of Dublin, as I raised a glass of Guinness in a pub in Galway. To us, I whispered, and to the life we built. When I came home, I made some changes. I donated $25,000 to the Savannah chapter of the National Council on Aging, specifically to their elder abuse prevention program. I spoke at their annual fundraiser, telling my story to a room full of people who had either experienced something similar or who worked to prevent it. You are not alone, I told them. You are not weak, and you are not wrong to fight back. I got the dental work I'd been putting off. I bought myself a new car, nothing fancy, just a reliable Honda that would get me where I needed to go. I renovated the kitchen, the first major update since Harold and I had moved in 47 years ago. I kept his rose garden exactly as it was. Patricia and Michael started bringing the girls to visit more often. Emma was 12 now, Sophie was 10, and they filled my house with laughter and noise and life. We baked cookies together. We watched movies. We worked in the garden, and I taught them how to care for their grandfather's roses. Tyler stayed in touch. His relationship with his father was complicated, but his relationship with me was not. He called every few weeks. He sent me pictures from school. When he got his